Hey everyone, this is Mr. Baker with our last video of Unit 2. I know it's been kind of a longer unit, or at least it feels that way, especially since our first unit was only 2 sections. But as we started this unit talking about cells, and it kind of morphed into talking a lot about the chemical processes that happen inside cells, I thought here would be a good kind of pause point to talk about some of those types of molecules in uh, preparation for what we're going to do next, but also because they're things that you probably recognize from foods that you eat, right? Macromolecules, like carbohydrates, are just really big molecules. Right? Carbohydrates are, we're going to see them a lot in things like breads, pastas, sugary drinks, right? They have long strings of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, kind of like the ones seen here. Right? They are made of what we call monosaccharides. A monomer is just a small part that, if you put it together, becomes a polymer. Right? But these are simple sugars like glucose. Right? Glucose is a monomer. Right? But if you put a bunch of them together, you get a disaccharide and a polysaccharide. Di, two, poly, many. Right? So it depends on the length of that hydrocarbon, how many carbons are in the chain. Your body uses these as a immediate energy source, but it also uses it as a building block for structure and support. Things like cellulose, or if nitrogen is added to this, it becomes chitin, something we'll talk about way at the end of the year. But this is our first macromolecule, carbohydrates. Our second one that we've talked about this unit are lipids. We talked about this at the very beginning when we talked about cell membranes. Those were bi-layer lipid membranes. So again, lots of carbon, lots of hydrogen. It kind of looks like a chain. The monomers for this are glycerols and fatty acids. And you probably have heard of saturated and unsaturated fats. The only difference there is somewhere in an unsaturated fat, there is a double bond instead of the single bonds that mark saturated fats. But our phospholipids, those were lipids, all right? We haven't talked about them, but you've probably encountered some medicines that are steroids. They are lipid based, and since they are lipids, they can get through the cell membrane and deliver whatever kind of help the body needs. These are energy storage. So long-term energy storage. Those elemental bonds between carbon and hydrogen hold energy, and they hold energy well. The double bond between the carbon and carbon hold energy well. So they're long-term energy storage. When we talked about ATP, we said that it was a nucleic acid. Our next unit is going to talk a lot about DNA. In fact, our next 3 units are going to talk a lot about DNA. Right? This is a complex macromolecule. There are a lot of repeating nucleotides. Down here on the bottom right is a single nucleotide. You can see that it is made of a phosphate, a sugar, and a nitrogenous base. We'll talk much more about those next unit. Right? But they also could be drawn like this. Right? You could see the double helix of DNA, very familiar. If you kind of untwisted it, you'd get the DNA ladder. And if you wanted to show all of those parts of a nucleotide, you could use this structure that's kind of in the middle. And that picture is actually what our question for today is about. So that DNA strand was labeled as anti-parallel. What do you think the term anti-parallel means? Just give me a complete sentence. You might want to look back at that picture for a second. So I'm going to show it. Sorry, wrong way. Show it. You can hit pause, answer the question, and then we'll move on. All right. So nucleic acids, complex macromolecule, repeating pattern. This is actually all 3 of the common ones that are going to appear in mRNA, right? C for cytosine, G for guanine, A for adenine, and U for uracil. Right? So now you've seen the 3 big types of nucleotides, which are the monomers for nucleic acids. Proteins are what we're going to talk about a lot next unit. They have diverse jobs. They do a whole bunch of different things. Sometimes we just call them enzymes. Their monomer is amino acids. We're going to talk more about those next unit too. How we go from amino acids into proteins is a very important thing for how our bodies and how organisms as a whole get traits from their DNA. Enzymes, like I said, they have special jobs. Some enzymes are going to speed up or slow down chemical reactions. So you might have heard about those in physical science, and you'll definitely hear about them in chemistry. Right? But proteins and enzymes can be changed and activated or deactivated based on things like pH or temperature. I want you to know those. I put soaps and detergents and heavy metals in parentheses because I don't really want you to know those. Those are not as common, but they do activate and deactivate enzymes. So this one, not very long. We're just talking about the 4 macromolecules. Make sure you know each macromolecule and its monomer, as well as its function, what it does. We'll talk about these more in class. I'll see you there.